true wisdom is really nothing less than grace. I genuinely believe that God meets us in our dysfunction. Hi everyone, Angelo here. I'm a creative and theologian, and it's a 20th Sunday in Ordinary Time. So we are still in chapter 10 of Mark, and we have Jesus who is about to set out for a journey. But before he's able to leave, they say a rich man run up to him and kneel down before him and say, "Good master, good teacher, what do I have to do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said, "Well, I mean, you know what to do, and he started to list out all the commandments and saying, you need to follow all these things. And the man is like, "Well, yeah, but I doing that from a long time. I doing that since I small." And Jesus here, and they say looking steadily at him, right? He gazed at him. And I imagine this was a really beautiful conversation, because I'm sure Jesus could tell that the person had a genuine desire for more of a deeper relationship with God. And he's like, you're lacking one thing. And the man's like, "Well, what is that? Tell me, I will do it." And he's like, "Go and sell everything you have and give the money to the poor and then come and follow me." And that was the turning point for the man. They say his face fell because, well, he was a man of great wealth. And he's like, and probably in his mind, he's like, I want to be in a relationship with God, but I want to be in a relationship that bad. So the disciples and them shocked, right? And then Jesus doubled on what he's saying. And he even comes with the famous line that we know, where it says, "It's harder for a rich person to enter into the kingdom than it is for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle." So, of course, the disciples and they're concerned, like, what about us who leave everything to follow you? And Jesus says, there's nobody who has left everything to follow me. What he says here is, will be repaid 100 times over in this time and in the world to come in eternal life. So in reflecting on this, it does take me back to a session I was in with my therapist once. And what he had said was that for certain people, and well, essentially he was describing me based over things I told him, though, not like he was just doing any kind of psychoanalysis. It's like based over things I would have shared. He said, but for some people, we fall victim to our own hubris. And I had to sit with that for a little bit and take a step back and, ponder on it. But I think this reading is a good example of what he would have said that day. However, the rich man got his riches, he got them, right? But I'm sure he worked very hard to either achieve them or to continue to maintain them. And I mean, what rational person isn't proud of the work they put in, especially when it pays off, right? So I can definitely understand where the man of the story is coming from here. Because I imagine everybody who is here listening knows how difficult it is to invest all our resources into something or a few efforts, in the case might be, even our spiritual lives. And then when those efforts pay off, it feels good. I mean, we're proud of it. We really do develop a deep sense of pride when these things pay off or seem like they're paying off. So I don't think it's a displaced pride at all. I mean, I think we should be proud of when our efforts pay off and when we achieve goals and dreams that we would have set. What's difficult, though, is when the pride takes over and the pride itself becomes the object of our heart rather than our motivation for the dream in the first place. And even more than that, what's even more difficult is when it's time to let go of those things, like the rich man in his story had to do here. See, the thing is, a lot of times I don't think we might necessarily be enamored with the object itself or the achievement itself. And I mean, I know it happens and I know it's normal and whatnot. And yeah, for a lot of people, yes, sure, sometimes the object itself is the prize. But I imagine for, what Catholics would refer to as well-formed people, the same way this person in the story here, this man seemed to be a well-formed person. But for people who know how to keep the commandments and engage in a certain level of spiritual practice and discipline. People like that, people like us, I would say, aren't usually materialistic, or at least not in the traditional sense. See, many of us, we kind of go past the point of being obsessed with the material itself and, begin to look beyond. We begin to look deeper. We begin to understand that it is the beginning of a radical reliance on God, and that is the beginning of solid relationship with God. And that's what the commandments are, which is why I think Jesus would have told the person, follow the commandments first. The commandments are a beginning. So the thing is, we believe that God gave us the rules mainly for our own happiness. And yes, that is true. But I think it also goes deeper than that as well. So while we are able to let go of materialistic things, it is harder, a lot harder, to let go of ourselves and our egos, our efforts, especially when we would have felt so good about attaining the level we would have gotten to so far in our lives. Especially when it comes to attaining a certain level of discipline, especially spiritual discipline, and all the detachment that would have come with that in the process. So just like the rich man, a lot of us are people who are eager to do better. Because taking this man didn't just casually walk up to Jesus. The man ran up to him. And he didn't just talk to him like any old regular. He paying him a level of respect that they weren't even used to seeing. He didn't come with, oh, master or teacher. He's like, good teacher, good master. So chances are he knew about Jesus, but he didn't necessarily understand who he was. And which, as much as many of the gospel stories are probably allegorical, I really can't blame Jesus for I really can't blame people, for not accepting that Jesus was God. Because none of us today meet any other human and believe that we meet in God. And I would think, in a certain sense, that is prudent. In a certain sense, I would say it's wise. But because it is a wise thing to do, I feel like we also can't blame anyone in the stories either. They are no different to how we are today. So when there are people who don't drop everything to follow Christ, I do think it requires a certain level of sensitivity from us, a certain level of empathy, because we ourselves, we're all working towards trying to follow Christ in our own way. But yet, at the same time, it does lend a certain level of respect to anyone who we are able to see, and I think it's visible in a lot of people, anyone who genuinely lets go of everything and leaves everything behind to follow Christ. And I suppose that's why true wisdom is really nothing less than grace, because it's being able to not make sense out of nonsense and still following God's call anyways. Because even the disciples, as we see, they themselves were concerned about their well-being. But Jesus told the rich man to let go everything he had and follow him. The same way we are all called to let go everything we have and follow him. Even when, or maybe I should say especially when, we work super hard to get it and achieve it. And sometimes that means letting go of the pride we would have picked up along the way of letting go of everything else in the process. I think discipline helps us to be better disciples. And to be disciples means to lean into our relationship with God, ultimately. It's all about being in union with God. And in the same way, Aquinas would have said, the commandments are there for us for true freedom. True freedom is being able to rest in the presence of God. So that means letting go of the things we hold on to. It means letting go of our accomplishments, our successes, and sometimes we might even hold on to our failures and our pains and our hurts. But it means letting go of everything. And it also means letting go of our moral and spiritual disciplines and accomplishments. So it means leaving our egos at the door when we enter into prayer with God. It means properly entering into a poverty that empties us of our own selves and opens us up to the Spirit of God. And I mean, as always, it is different for everybody, right? There's no one clear-cut path for everyone. So for some, it might mean, pursuing a material poverty. For some, it might be stepping down from the pedestals that they would have rightfully earned for themselves throughout the years. And for some, it might be something as simple as giving more people the time of day and giving people a listening ear. But whatever it is that we struggle to let go most of, especially our goodness and our blessings, is only then when we're able to let go of it that we're truly able to follow Christ. And it's difficult. I understand. I get that. I know how hard it is. But the good news is it's not impossible. I mean, I genuinely believe that God meets us in our dysfunction. And like Christ reminded us here, nothing is impossible for God. So this whole thing about a camel passing through the eye of a needle. I remember as a child, this used to blow my mind, right? Because all I understood in my mind was like, well, I don't have one, but a sewing needle, right? And we know how tiny the eye of that needle is. And even up to now, has never seen a camel, but I imagine a camel was massive. So I used to think, what did Christ mean offer this? Is it like nobody could enter? And I suppose that's what the story is getting at here too. What I came to understand later on, apparently, some people have came up with sometimes merchants and when they're moving with all the cargo and the camels and everything, they wouldn't pass through like the big main gates of the city. And they might want to pass through it, like it might be a smaller gate or even sometimes with cracks in the wall. What apparently that was referred to as a needle. But the thing is, to get through those cracks or to get through those small gates, you had to let go, you had to offload the camel of everything that the animal would have had. And even then, it was still pressure to make it through. So the same way that sometimes we have to let go of everything to be able to pass through, and it's not impossible, super difficult still, but not impossible, is the same way too. Everything that we would have had and achieved and all the good virtuous things we might have picked up along the way and all the spiritual freedom and everything, we could still be enslaved to our own spiritual hubris. So a question to ask ourselves is, what more did I pick up along the way that I now need to let go of? When I was letting go of things, what did I pick up in the process? What or who do I need to detach from? And not just materially, in order to rely on God. But whatever it is that we do need to detach from or continue detaching from, I do hope that we are able to. And it is a lifelong journey ultimately. So let's be gentle with ourselves. We don't just go through so much abuse on a daily basis, whether it's self-inflicted or otherwise. But God will meet us where we're at. God will meet us in our dysfunction. So let's remind ourselves that for God, all things are possible. And I'm sure we have already seen in our own lives the way God is able to work and act in our lives and bring us into deeper relationship. And if it was possible before, I can't think of any reason why it isn't possible now. So let's trust in that fact. Anyways, that's it from me this week. And as always, I appreciate you so much for watching. Thank you.